It might not be 2015 anymore, but fans of the Cleveland Cavaliers are falling in love with an Australian hooper all over again. Luke Travers is capturing the hearts and gaining attention of Cavs fans for the second straight year in Las Vegas, and he has shown some tangible skills that could translate to an NBA floor as soon as next season. Now, even I myself have mostly overlooked Travers as he's been overseas in the NBL, but as this has been changing rapidly and the hype train is gaining steam, I thought we should talk about who exactly Luke Travers is and if it's possible that he has been the answer to Cleveland's problems at the wing position all along. Before I get started, let me just say, as always, if you like this content and you want to support the channel, then all you have to do is hit subscribe and drop a like. Those two things genuinely help a lot, and it is very much appreciated. Now, Luke Travers is a draft and stash prospect for the Cavaliers, selected 56th in the 2022 NBA draft and spending the last few seasons in Australia playing for multiple NBL teams. He's been a pro since he was a teenager, averaging a career-high 12 points and 7.6 rebounds in his most recent season with Melbourne United. Travers has the type of multifaceted skill set that makes him the ideal wing in today's NBA, and I think that's why most people are so excited about Travers and his potential fit in Cleveland, as this is a guy who at his best could be a connective playmaker and advantage creator who displays a knack for moving without the ball, and he could slot seamlessly into a team system. For the Cavs specifically, the addition of head coach Kenny Atkinson is another reason why Travers is such an appealing fit in a motion offense. I can see Travers being the type of player who fits exactly into what Cleveland is looking to do, and that's probably why fans are so excited. But there are some flaws in his game that I think are worth looking at. For starters, Travers is not much of a three-point shooter. He's a career 32% shooter in the NBL, and he's had just one season above 34%. Now, to be fair, in that year, he did set a career high of 40%, which is very respectable, but it's still extremely low volume at just under 3 attempts per game, and all of that in addition to Travers being a below 70% free throw shooter just gives me some serious concerns that Travers will ever be able to space the floor at an NBA level. But with that being said, I understand that there are some concerns about how the Cavs have developed their young players in recent years, but one thing that they have done and I think is worth giving credit for is they've done a fine job of improving their three-point shooters. Isaac Okoro is the greatest example of this. He has grown mightily as a three-point shooter. Even if he still isn't where you would like him to be, there is no doubt that he has improved since his rookie season. The same can be said for Darius, Garland, and Dean Wade, and even Evan Mobley has seen improvements in this regard. So I do actually think Travers would be landing in a good spot to work on his jumper if he chooses to come over to the NBA this season. And judging by some of his recent comments, I kind of think that Travers joining the Cavs this year is something that's absolutely on the table. And so if that happens, then improving his three-point shot is probably the single biggest thing the Cavs will be looking to do with Travers. If he isn't able to space the floor, then that would put a really low ceiling on whatever potential Travers has to fit in with Cleveland. So yes, I am worried about his jump shot, but funnily enough, I actually think a guy like Max Strus is a good example of how Travers could still be beneficial for the Cavs, even if he isn't knocking down three-pointers. Obviously, Strus was brought to Cleveland for his three-point shooting, but we saw throughout last season that Strus remained one of their most impactful players, even during some of his poor shooting nights, because of his ability to handle the ball and shift the defense. Having a multifaceted skill set really stands out on a team that is full of one-dimensional role players. And so while Travers might never be an elite or even average three-point shooter, although I'm not entirely ruling any of that out, his ability to put the ball on the deck and create advantages is something that would definitely translate and make him an impactful player for the Cavs. So yes, three-point shooting is the swing factor for Travers. I still think the most important strength that he has to his game is his versatility. He's a 6'7" point forward with a high IQ and solid athleticism. Travers has never been a super high usage player, so his per game numbers aren't anything that seems spectacular, but if you just watch some of his highlights, you can see Travers has great court vision and he can deliver the ball in a variety of ways. The big question to me is how much of this is still possible once he's facing NBA level competition. We have seen a little bit of his playmaking chops in Summer League, but The competition in Vegas is still far below what Travers will see on the big stage, and so I'll have to see how Travers handles that type of defense before I can officially join the hype train. I'm not as convinced that he has the speed or ball handling ability to break down a defense in the pros, and his ability to create advantages for himself and others might be stifled at this level. The one reassuring aspect that could redeem all of this is his feel for the game and general craftiness. Travers is a really smart, heads-up type of player, both with and without the ball. He's a fantastic cutter, and he seems to map the court really well with a constant image of where everyone is around him. That makes me think Travers could be the type of player who thrives next to better teammates. So, for example, if you place him on the Cavs, then sure, the increased competition might limit his skills, but having better teammates to play off could actually counterbalance that problem and allow Travers to serve as a low-usage glue guy. That's the current role that I see for Travers. I would imagine he plays something similar to the role that Dean Wade has been filling, just providing the Cavs with another option here and someone who can make their presence felt in a few different ways. Again, the Cavs are so full of one-dimensional offensive players on their bench from Okoro, Wade, and Niang that someone like Travers would be a more than welcomed addition. I think at his best, Travers would add a new layer to the offense, and he has a pretty sick mullet, which I think is worth mentioning. I feel confident that Travers will, at the very least, hold his own defensively, if not prove to be a competent, positive impact on the defensive side of the ball. Again, he's a good team player with a high IQ and feel for the game, and on top of this, he's a strong rebounder, which is something that, again, the Cavs are just generally lacking outside of their big men. Travers is a gritty, tough player who has always managed to track down missed shots, and that's another benefit to this team, as well as his finishing at the rim, which is probably his best asset as a scorer. Now, he's not the most explosive scoring threat, but he is a creative finisher, and he knows how to use his body to get inside of the paint and convert layups. He runs the floor really well, and he'll be a threat in transition, so this to me is a strong foundation for Travers to build on offensively. If he can ever expand his range to the three-point line, then Travers becomes a very valuable role player in today's NBA. But bringing this back to my concerns, he is 22 years old and turning 23 in early September. That makes him roughly the same age as Isaac Okoro, who I know isn't the most highly talked about player on the Cavs, but if you go back to the 2021 Summer League, Okoro was averaging 16 points on 60% shooting and was subsequently pulled after just 2 games because he was simply too good to be playing in Summer League. So I think it's really important to keep this in perspective. Travers at 22 and with multiple years of pro experience should be dominating Summer League without hardly breaking a sweat at this stage of his career. There are just very few rotational players who would not eviscerate the Summer League if they were given a chance, and so up to this point, Travers has been good. I don't think you can argue that he's been bad by any means, but he hasn't quite lit the Summer League on fire. Maybe that will change as the games continue, but if this is a guy who is going to play serious minutes on an NBA playoff team this season, then I just kind of feel like he should be looking like a man among boys in Vegas, and that hasn't totally been the case up to this point. Again, Travers has looked good so far, so I'm not taking anything away from him here. I do just want to say, let's be honest, that Milwaukee squad just looked horrendous in their game against Cleveland, so as always, we have to take this stuff, whether it's good or bad, with a big grain of salt, and so either way, I'm certainly excited to watch Travers and the rest of this Cavs team compete in Summer League. I think there's a lot of fun stuff to watch for, and even though I am not fully on board of the hype train just yet, I'm watching it closely and I might be joining it in due time.